What sorts of priors have been helpful in neural decoding? What, are there examples? Well, I'm thinking maybe, of, treating this neural activity as a dynamical system, and then making certain assumptions about the dynamics. Where have we been successful in applying like constraints and priors, and what has yielded fruit? And where do we think maybe we've been too restrictive in trying to apply our priors? That's a broad question.
I have a hard time talking about anything that has to do with priors with Konrad on. I'd be too embarrassed to.
Why? But maybe Matt, let's make sure that our audience knows what we mean when we talk about priors. So, we usually, when we build decoders or something, we build in some of the aspects that we know about brains. Now, let's list a few of them. Like, what are the priors? We believe that there exists a relatively low-dimensional manifold of neural activity that matters. We believe that a spike sent by a neuron at one point of time means something very similar to the spike being sent at just like a millisecond later or something. We believe that for any given decoding task, most neurons are probably mostly irrelevant. So we have all these like prior knowledge about properties of the world, and by building in some of them, we can build better systems than not building in these intuitions. So the reason relates to what you said earlier, Matt, where you can say, it's basically we have this problem of if we're in high dimensions, we have the curse of dimensionality. It's very hard for us to know what the right solutions are. By us building in things that we already know about the brain in a way, we make that problem easier because there's effectively fewer possible decoders that we're willing to admit.
Konrad, can I just quickly say, not everyone makes the assumption, though, that the data is low dimensional. So I have to add that. In terms of sensory, so in terms of motor systems and output and of behavior and limb movement, that seems like a relatively reasonable assumption. But in terms of our representation of the sensory world, like the images you see, you're seeing many millions of pixels every time you move your head. And that representation and how to do object recognition and see and figuring out where things are in the world, that is helpful to be in a high dimensional space to do that. So I will say in that context, we don't assume a low dimensional space. But yeah, otherwise I okay.
Yeah, and I totally agree with Carsen there. No, like the idea that our thoughts are very low-dimensional. It's just insane if you start thinking it through. No? Like, clearly the way we experience our visual world is very high-dimensional. So when I say low-dimensional, I'm not saying, and I think most of my colleagues aren't saying it's like really low-dimensional. It might be a little more low-dimensional than the neurons could be if we had all of them do their independent things. And yet it's
low dimensionality relative to the number of neurons participating in the encoding.
Yeah, I guess so. Carsen, could you be willing to accept that it's at least a little bit smaller than the number of neurons that we have?
Maybe a little bit, but it's still open for debate. I think until we have a good model of how the brain is encoding these visual stimuli, we can't really say how many dimensions are being shared among the neurons and get a true number on it that's below a large number.
You could probably cap it, though, based on correlations across neurons. So you have a lot of neuronal firing is correlated enough that it can't be the number of neurons. It has to be smaller than that.
But it could be close to that number because there can be many dimensions. They could be correlated, but there could be many dimensions that each neuron participates in. So you're right. Like there will be directions that multiple neurons participate in, but that neuron could participate in many different directions. So it could still be as high dimensional as the number of neurons, even though there are correlations in the population. But yeah, no, it is a good point, and it could be very different from brain area to brain area too.